I've just been reading some of your guys' scary stories and this one gave me gooseblesh. So I'm going to tell you guys. It's been sent in by Chloe and she lives in a rural town in England. And when she was 16, she got off the bus from college. And as she got off the bus, it was winter time, she noticed a man across the street just wearing a high-vis jacket, just staring. He wasn't staring at her, he wasn't staring at buildings, he wasn't staring at the bus. There was also like nothing where he was standing. It wasn't a bus stop, it wasn't a bench. He was just on a path, staring into the abyss. This kind of made Chloe a bit uneasy and a bit unsettled, so she decided to walk quite quickly back home. And she kept on turning around to check where this man was, and then she noticed that he wasn't there anymore. This further unsettled Chloe because she would have seen him walk away. Like, in their surroundings, he couldn't have just like gone into a building or gone into a tree line. She would have seen him walk in some direction. She would have seen a car go by. She didn't see anything. This man just disappeared into thin air. By the time Chloe got home, her parents had already gone out. It was Friday night and she was used to just being on her own. So she went upstairs to her bedroom, just chilled out, watched TV, was on her phone, and she heard their utility door open. Now, many houses are like this in the UK. You have your kitchen door that leads to your utility room, and often your utility room will lead to your garage. When she had the utility room open, she kind of just paused because she knew that someone was coming into the house. She stood at the top of the stairs, waiting to hear anything. She didn't, but then she heard the door hit against one of the cupboards, which confirmed that that door was open and somebody was in the house. It's giving me goosebumps now. Chloe's got balls of steel, especially as a 16-year-old. She slowly creeps down the stairs, but she's got her trusty dog by her side. And she peers around into the kitchen where she can see the utility door, and she sees the door close. Again, Chloe's got balls of steel. She checks every single room in the house. It's all clear. And the dog, no signs of anybody in the house. But the dog did get up when he heard the door open, knowing that it was real, he heard it too. Chloe then decides to spend the rest of the evening downstairs in her living room watching TV, and she says that where she's watching TV, she can't really see the entrance to the living room door. She's kind of got her back towards it. This house reminds me a lot of one of my friend's house, and very weird that we had a very similar experience in her house. As she's watching TV, she's hearing lots of creaks, lots of bumps, but her mum usually says that's just the house settling and the house is just talking to you. So Chloe's kind of ignoring it. But then Chloe hears a whisper right behind her head and something touches her neck. She sits bolt upright and notices her dog staring directly at the door. I wouldn't even want to turn around. She says she then follows her dog's eye line. So she's not turning around, but her dog is facing the door and the dog is looking at the door and its eyes track to where the window is. Again, our girl Chloe's got balls of steel. She decides to get up, investigate, but it ends up going to the kitchen to do the washing up. And that's when she notices her dog go down the hallway, is sat at his favourite spot at the top of the landing on the stairs and is growling. She goes to check on her dog and the scruff of his hair on the back of his neck is standing up and he's growling. She's trying to offer him sweets. She's trying to stroke him, but he's not interested in Chloe. He's just fixated on one spot and he's growling. Everything's adding up a bit too much for Chloe and she's getting a bit scared. But then all of a sudden, her dog just snaps out of it. She says her Labrador was very protective and she knows that something was scaring her dog at that point. Very soon after, Chloe's parents returned home and she left the front door locked. So when her parents came home, she would unlock the door for them. And as she unlocked the door, she noticed on the driveway a high-vis jacket. The same high-vis jacket that the man she saw staring at the bus stop. She panics and tells her dad everything that's happened that night. And her dad goes, "It's probably mine. I've got one. It's probably flew out the garage." He then takes the high-vis jacket into the garage and goes, "Oh no, my high-vis jacket's already hanging up. I must have two." Silly dad, thinking it's just a coincidence, but Chloe says, no, something was toying with her that night. She doesn't know if it was a ghost or even scarier. She doesn't know if it was a real person, but every now and then she hears that utility door open. Thank you, Chloe, for sending me in that story. When I was around the same age, I was having a sleepover at my friend's house. Her name was Amy, and she had a very similar layout to your house. And I remember her kitchen door that led to her garage slammed shut one night, and it kept on doing it over and over again, opening and slamming shut. So we locked it with the key. And when we came downstairs in the morning, the key was in the middle of the kitchen floor. We shit ourselves. If you've got a scary story you want to share, you can find my email in my bio, or you can send me a DM.
You get scared easy, scroll, because I have another scary story submission that was sent via email. This one is pretty creepy because it's about a mimic. We've talked about mimics on my page before. If you don't know what that is, if you stay watching, you're about to find out. Again, this is your time to scroll before I get into reading. Now let's get into it. The subject of this email is listed, "Something is copying my best friend's voice." I go on to say, "Hey, I've rewritten this like 5 times. I keep second guessing myself. I'm just gonna send it before I chicken out again. You can call me Eli. Please don't use my last name or the name of my town. I'll say that I'm in northern Minnesota, up near the Iron Range. That's as specific as I want to get. If you know that area, it's mostly lakes and pines and a whole lot of nothing between houses. I have a best friend named Marcus. We've known each other since we were 7. He lives about 20 minutes from me and we hang out almost every single weekend. Video games, ice fishing in the winter, whatever. He's the kind of friend where we don't even really have to talk. We can just be in the same room doing our thing and it's fine. I need you to picture him as a real person because everything I'm about to tell you depends on the fact that he is real and he is alive and he is fine. Whatever has been in my house, it did not do anything to him. He doesn't even know any of this is happening. Hopefully he doesn't see my page. Anyways, I haven't told him because I don't know how. Back in September, I started hearing him at night. Not on the phone, not a memory. I would just be lying in bed and I would hear him say my name from somewhere in the house. Just once. Eli. The way he always says it. Kind of flat, kind of like he's already annoyed at me before I've done anything. That's a Marcus thing. He does it as a joke. He's done it since we were kids. I'd sit up and I'd listen again. There'd be nothing. My mom was asleep and my dad works overnights at the mine. So there was nobody else calling, and it was my best friend's voice that I heard coming from downstairs. That first time I actually pulled out my phone and I called him. When he picked up, he was kind of confused, half asleep. It was late. He asked me what was wrong. Said nothing. I thought I heard something. He was just kind of confused and went back to bed. I laid there feeling stupid. I told myself that I had to have dreamt it, but it happened again a few nights later. Same voice, same one word, Eli, from the hallway this time, closer than before. I didn't call him this time. I just laid there with my heart pounding and eventually I fell back asleep. Then it started answering me. This was maybe early October. I heard it say my name and before I could even think, I said Marcus out loud, just a reflex. And it literally said, "Yeah." I want you to understand what that word did to me because it was him. It was his exact voice. I have 15 years of memories with him saying that word to me and this was him. I know how voices can be faked. I know how brains do weird things at night. This was him. I sat up and I said, "Where are you?" And it said, "Downstairs." I did not go downstairs. Something in me, I don't know what, would not let me go down those steps. I sat at the edge of my bed and I listened and it never said anything else. I finally laid back down and I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next morning I texted Marcus, just, "You good?" He sent back a picture of him at work with his middle finger up. That's how he answers that question. He's fine. He'd been at work since about 6 a.m., hadn't been in my house, hadn't called me, hadn't done anything. I need to explain something to you about my house. My room is a converted attic above the garage. You get to it by a staircase off of the kitchen, and my door opens right at the top of the stairs. There is no other way up. There is no other way down. If something was calling me from downstairs, it was inside my house. I started locking the door at night. For about 2 weeks, it was quiet. I actually started to relax. I told myself I'd been stressed. I was drinking way too much energy drinks. I'd been staying up too late. I let my guard down. Then one night, I heard it in my room. I don't know how it got in. My door was locked. Window was locked. I checked both of them before I got into bed because now I check them every single night. But I woke up around 3 in the morning and I heard breathing next to my bed. Not loud, just steady. In and out, right by my ear. And it whispered, "Eli, wake up," in Marcus's voice. I did not move. I did not dare open my eyes. I want to be clear about that because I need you to know that I actually never saw anything. I kept my eyes closed and I laid there and I tried to breathe. I tried to convince myself I was still asleep, and I could feel its presence standing next to my bed for what felt like an hour, but it was probably only 5 minutes. I could hear the breathing. I could feel the air move when it exhaled. Then it said very quietly, right next to my ear, "You never came downstairs," like it was disappointed. Then it was gone. I don't know how. I didn't hear footsteps. I didn't hear my door. I just knew. In the way you know someone leaves a room, you can feel it. I could feel that I was alone again. I laid there till the sun came up. I did not open my eyes until there was light in the room. Next day, I went over to Marcus's house to hang out. We played Xbox for a few hours. Everything was normal. I started to feel almost human again. Then when I was leaving, standing in his doorway, he said something to me that made my stomach drop through the floor. He said, "Hey, weird question. Have you been coming into my room at night?" I said, "No. I haven't been to your house in like 2 weeks. Why?" He said his mom keeps thinking she hears him talking to somebody in his room. That she asked him about it twice. He told her she's crazy. But then he told me that a few nights prior, he woke up, his bedroom door was open, and he swore he closed it. And he thought he heard somebody say his name from the hallway, but in my voice. He was laughing when he told me. He thought it was funny. He thought maybe he was going crazy or having weird dreams. I laughed too. I don't know how. I laughed and I told him he was being a baby, and I got in my truck and I drove home, and I pulled over halfway there because I thought I was going to throw up. Something is in my house using his voice. Something is in his house using my voice. I don't know what it wants. I don't know if it wants the same thing in both places. I moved out 3 weeks ago. I told my parents I got a job in Duluth. I didn't. I'm sleeping on a coworker's couch, and I keep the TV on all night because silence is the worst thing in the world now. I haven't told Marcus. He still texts me normal things, memes, dumb videos, and is asking when I come home to visit. I don't know how to answer because as much as I know that it's him, I'm still so wigged out. Part of me questions if it's actually him texting me anymore. I check little details, the way he spells certain words, the emojis he uses, the nicknames he calls me, and everything always checks out. But I keep thinking about those nights in my bedroom. I keep thinking about the thing standing next to my bed, breathing in his voice. I wondered how long this thing had been listening to him to be able to get his voice that right. Then I keep thinking, what if it's still listening? What if it's better now than it was then? What if the next time I pick up the phone and he says, "Eli," it isn't him? This is really hard for me because it's made me develop a fear of my best friend, one that I never had, one that I don't want to have. I truly don't understand this. It happening in 2 different locations, it mimicking my voice and his voice at the same time. It's all just so confusing. Truly just left with wondering what the hell I'm supposed to do. If you decide to read this, I really would love to hear from other people who have had similar experiences. I saw that you talked a few times on your page about mimics, and that helped me do a deep dive. I genuinely think that this is what it is. Anyways, just felt like sharing my story with other people who have had similar experiences. Eli. First off, thank you for sharing your story with me and trusting me to share it on my page. I want to say I've actually never heard of a story like this. I've heard many stories with mimics. I've, of course, had some myself that I've shared with you guys. I've never heard of 2 different people experiencing a mimic that's mimicking their voices at the same time. That is very, very interesting to me. I wish that I had better insight. I wish I had some better advice to give you. If any of you who listen to this, watch this, have any experiences with mimics or anything kind of similar, go ahead and comment some of your opinions, or if you have any kind of input, advice, etc. If you would like to send your scary story to me to have a chance for me to read it on my page, the email where you send submissions is located in my bio. If you're new here and you want more scary stories, make sure to go ahead and give me a follow. As always, thank you for watching. Love you. Bye.
Good morning, y'all. Your favorite cousin is here with another story. This story is from California. Come on, come sit down. All right, so she said when she was 16 years old, she asked her parents if she could go to this house party, and her parents told her no. So she decided she was going to sneak out the house, and she was going to go meet up with 2 of her friends at this house party. Please scare the hell out of your kids and let them know what can happen to them if they leave the house without your consent, or leave the house and people don't know where they are. Please scare the hell out of them. Anyway. So she said that when her and her friends got to this house, that there were no cars. It wasn't a house party at all. Like, you know, usually house parties be jumping. She said that they were confused. So they went to the front door, knocked on the door, and they asked the guy, like, oh, is this the correct address for the house party? He said, oh, yeah, come on in. Now, her and her friends, they go in, they sit down, and they're just waiting for people, like an overflow of people to start coming in. She said nobody ever came. So they're sitting there a good 30 minutes, she said, and all of a sudden, these people started doing hardcore drugs, cocaine, shooting up. I think I'm more worried that y'all stayed with crackheads. So fast forward to, they've been sitting there a while, even after the drugs. And so they finally decided they're going to get up and leave. So they start walking towards the door. And when they start walking towards the door, this man and this woman come through the door first before they had a chance to leave out. And they were like, oh, where y'all going? And they were just like, oh, there's no party, so there's no reason to stay. So the woman was just like, oh, well, why don't you just hang with us? We can make it a party. So the three teenagers was like, oh, okay, well, how can we make it a party? And the woman's like, oh, we usually go and we drink and we smoke. And she's like, okay, but where y'all going? The woman says, we usually hang at the cemetery. So they get to the cemetery, and she said when they got there, the woman starts asking them questions like, where did y'all, like, what school do y'all go to? Where y'all from? Asking them questions like that. And then she starts asking them weird questions. Now, mind you, she said that this boy and this girl, this man and this woman, look about their age, but probably a couple years older. So fast forward, the police, they get there and, you know, shining their flashlight and asking the teens, why are they out there? So they look around, and the men and a woman that they met at the party are not anywhere to be found. They're looking around. They're like, oh, we were out here with, and they get to looking around, and the police like, with who? So the police throw them in the back of the car, drives them home, tells their parents like, hey, we found them at the cemetery. Keep an eye on your kids. There's some kids missing right now. So fast forward, it's Monday and it's time to go back to school. And she said that her and her friends were talking to one of the upperclassmen, one of the seniors, they're juniors. And she said when she was talking to one of the seniors, she was just like, you know, yeah, like what happened there? Everybody was supposed to be at the house party, but nobody was there. We were the only ones that showed up. And they were just like, what party? And so she started to tell them, like, remember the guy that was walking around passing out flyers? They were just like, no, we didn't know anything about a party. Like, we don't know what y'all talking about. So she starts describing the house, like, to the senior, and was just like, well, it's this, you know, it was at this house and this and that. This guy's name is this and that. And they were like, we don't even know who that is. Like, and we don't know what party you're talking about. So, you know, no. So now her and her friend are just like, oh my God, like whose house were we at if they didn't go here to this school? So fast forward to the girl whose story this is. She goes home and she's telling her mom about, you know, the experience, because the mom still wants answers to why the heck were you at somebody's house and you don't even know them. So the girl updates her mom and tells her mom, like, hey, I was asking one of the seniors about it, and the senior was like, we don't even know who y'all talking about. That person, like the person you're describing, we've never seen them at this school. So the mom is worried, and she gets out that police officer's card who dropped her daughter off, and she calls him and she says, hey, this is the address, you know, of the person. Did you ever check out the address? And the police officer was like, that house is vacant. Like, it's boarded up. So now the mom is even more worried, and she was just like, y'all didn't realize that the damn house was boarded up when y'all were about to go in there for a house party? So fast forward, a few months have passed, and they never got to the bottom of who those people were, and they never saw them again. So now that some months have passed, it's time for the seniors at this girl's school to, you know, go to prom, and it sparks some memories. So the mom decided she was going to get her prom photo book and her senior photos and stuff out, right? So when the mom took out her senior book and senior photos and stuff, the girl spotted the man and the woman that were there in the cemetery with them in her mom's photo book. So her mom was just like, what? She was like, that's the girl and that's the boy that was there. And the mom was just like, oh, honey, like they passed away years ago. So she looked at her daughter and she was like, so it can't be them. Like, it just can't be them that you saw. So then the mom, you know, started asking questions like, so the boy and the girl that you met at that house and that you were hanging with at the cemetery, what were they wearing? Like, what did they look like? She was like, now that you mention it, like they were wearing like pretty much like 80s clothes, but I thought that was just their style. I like that. I just thought that's what they wanted to wear. So the mom was just like, well, what did they say their names were? So she told her mom, like, the names. The name, now, the mom didn't show her the name. When her daughter said the names, her mom just was dumbfounded. She couldn't even believe that she knew their names. She pretty much never showed her daughter this book. She was like, they passed away, our senior year of high school. They were drinking and driving, and they crashed their car. So the daughter invites her friends over, and she shows her friends her mom's senior yearbook. And her friends just cannot believe that they were sitting there chilling, smoking and drinking with a couple of ghosts at a cemetery. Well, I feel like that should have been y'all number one thing. First of all, why are we at the cemetery hanging out? What you mean you be hanging at the cemetery? And when they said they be hanging at the cemetery, that's pretty much their number one place, because that's where they buried. So she said that now her and her mom will go and lay flowers on their grave every now and again. But she said still to this day, she's never seen them again. But she just thought it was so crazy how they showed themselves like that to them.
The person that sent me the story did not put a subject, but it says this is a story about 2 cursed posters. That was the first line, and I was like, I gotta read this. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi, Anti Matrix. Hi. This is a story about 2 cursed posters that were bought from the county fair that took place in my high school very long ago, but it's still a story I'll never forget. To give a backstory, I had a friend named Sally, name changed for privacy. She bought 2 hand-drawn prints of the Nightmare Before Christmas characters from this private vendor while shopping around at the fair, took them home and hung them in her room. A few weeks later, she started noticing some creepy things that started happening out of nowhere, like hearing whispering voices in her hallway, seeing people walk by quickly at the corner of her eye, and things of that nature. She thought nothing of it. One night, she sends me a photo and asks me if I can see a dark shadow in the corner of the photo in her mirror that was facing her hallway. I took a look at the photo, and sure enough, I could see a dark, tall shadow figure in the corner as well. Her parents were super religious and ended up bringing in a priest to bless their home. Smart. While the priest was blessing the home, he mentioned that the 2 photos that my friend bought from the fair were no good and are bringing negative energy, and also said that they were cursed. He urged her to get rid of them and said that the negative energy would go away once they were gone. Her parents made her get rid of the photos, and that's when they ended up in my house. Why in the motherfuck would you take these after a priest literally said that they were fucking cursed? What do you even mean? Sally lets me know that she's getting rid of her Nightmare Before Christmas posters and asks if I or someone else may want them, as she didn't want to just throw them away in the trash. They meant a lot to her, and to just do that. I also didn't really take the pictures being cursed or negative energy serious. Okay, that makes sense. And kind of thought it was all BS. At this time, I was actually hanging out with another friend that was sleeping over at my house. We'll call her Zoe. I tell Sally to hold on to the posters for us, and me and Zoe were on our way to pick them up because Zoe wanted them for her room. Zoe and I pick up the posters from Sally, and we go back to my house. She puts the posters next to her overnight bag and props them up against the wall. We go on with our day like normal. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. Nighttime came, and we were ready to go to bed, and I let Zoe sleep in my room, and I slept in the guest bedroom. While laying down watching TV, all of a sudden I felt really weird and heavy energy. It felt like everything just got really silent and cold. Before I could even blink, something pulled my hair so hard that it yanked my neck back pretty aggressively. I screamed for my mom to come get me. I was too frozen in fear to even move. In the particular house I lived in at the time, it was very, very haunted, and it was such a normal occurrence for me or my friends to experience things in there, so nothing seemed super out of the ordinary about my hair getting pulled so hard, even though it scared the life out of me. Oh my God, I don't understand how there's so many people in this world that send me stories that just live in these haunted ass houses. And I understand living in a haunted ass house if it's like good ghosts, like right spirits of light and love, whatever, just hanging out with you, doing funny shit like turning your TV on and off. But if you have spirits that are in your house that are pulling your motherfucking hair, why are we okay with that? Why are we not trying to get rid of it? I don't understand. I didn't go in that room for weeks. That makes sense. I ended up sleeping in my mom's bed that night and told Zoe about what happened when she woke up the next morning. Eventually, Zoe's dad was on the way to my house to pick her up since our sleepover and weekend was coming to an end. She gathers up her stuff, grabs the posters, and gets in her dad's car when he came to pick her up. About 2 minutes after leaving my house, a car runs the stop sign and hits the side that Zoe was sitting on. It ended up being Zoe's mom's coworker. Once the information was exchanged from the accident, it was just such a weird coincidence. Zoe was okay, but still a little bruised up from the accident. After this, Zoe and I both agreed that all these bad things started happening after picking up the posters that were deemed no good, negative energy, and cursed by the priest that came to bless Sally's house. We walked to the back of our old middle school where they kept the dumpsters and tossed the posters over the fence into the trash and never looked back. After that, everything felt normal again. Definitely a story I think about sometimes. And if someone says they feel negative energy from an object, I make sure it stays very far away from me. The end. Oh my God. What do you guys think was like, do we think it was actually like a curse put on these posters, or do we just think like something was attached to it? Because the priest said a curse. Like, why would someone curse 2 posters? There had to be a reason for that. Or maybe there was just like literally something attached, there was definitely something attached to them if bad things were happening. And if you saw, or she saw, what was it? She sent you the photo. Can you see the dark shadow? That means there was an attachment. I feel like that means there was definitely attachment to this thing. This is why, can I just please just remind everybody, when you get things from other places, especially like thrift shops or yard sales or like other places where there's like so much other energy, cleanse your shit. Cleanse your shit, because you never know what the fuck is attached to any. That was so crazy and scary though. Thank you so much for sharing.
Appalachia is one of those places, the more I hear about it, the more convinced I get that it is haunted. This story today gave me chills, and I really hope to never experience anything like it. So grab a drink, grab a cozy blanket, and join me to tell you a scary story in my canning pantry after dark because it's raining. Welcome to Ghosts in the Garden. This story may be short or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I've ever experienced. It brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened about 2 to 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia and have my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream unless you've experienced it. I was with a friend. I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening, doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke. This is not a particularly long trail, but the woods are very dense that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking about your surroundings. We finally get about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop to smoke and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling, and at this point it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting to any sort of predatory animal in the area to cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. As soon as the forest goes quiet, there's a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking, humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain. Almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer, per se, but no matter how far we run down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over, not quieting or stopping. At this point, I am convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have only felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail gasping for breath, almost at the verge of tears with how frightening this was. We begin to exit, and then about 5 minutes from the exit, there's this bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like, and this was not an animal. It was not someone playing or watching a movie. This scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was genuinely the most depraved and violent scream I have ever heard. I have only told this story to maybe 3 people, all of whom seemed to brush it off as fake. I have never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. If something like that screamed directly behind me in the woods at night, I would also run. That sounds like something I'd never like to experience. If any of you are from the area or knowledgeable about this, what do you think this could be? I can't believe not only did it follow them, but it screamed right behind them. So thank you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Follow along if you like more ghost stories, and I will meet you here again next time for another ghost story in the dark.
So I was at my aunt's house yesterday and she told me this really bizarre story about something that happened to her and her friend who were hiking on a trail in the Bennington Triangle. And if you are an avid follower of mine, you know that we have spoken about the Bennington Triangle before on this page many times. I've never actually told like an encounter from somebody that I know. And I didn't even know that somebody I know had an encounter, so this is fucking crazy. And what's even crazier is that what she saw lines almost perfectly with some of the folklore that I talked about in my last video about this area. Her and her friend are hiking along this trail. She has no idea that they are at the Bennington Triangle. So her friend kind of like, I don't want to say lied to her, but didn't actually tell her the full truth of why they were going out there. So her friend wanted to sprinkle her mother's ashes in this like small cemetery that her mother had taken her to when she was a child. So she was trying to follow the trail to get to this area out in the woods. So they're walking or whatever. And then all of a sudden, 2 dogs come running around the bend. And my aunt and her friend had 2 dogs with them. My aunt's 2 dogs. And one of the dogs was off leash. One of my aunt's dogs was off leash. Her name was Charlie. So Charlie was off leash and she takes off running after these 2 dogs. She knows that Charlie has really good recall. She's going to come back no matter what. So whatever. She knows that Charlie's coming back. So they keep walking up the bend a little bit more and they come across these 2 guys. They strike up like a little mediocre conversation at first. They're like, hey, yeah, we're just hiking. We're like coming to see the cemetery. And the guys were like, oh, so you're looking for the cemetery. Let's give you some directions. We live right there at this cabin. And they pointed directly to the cabin that was off to the side, like out in the woods a little bit further. We live off in this cabin and we're the couple that maintains this properties, like this trail, so that people can actually hike it. At this point, Charlie had come back. The other dogs had not come back. Those 2 men give them the directions to get to this little mini cemetery, right? And the cemetery is not along the trail. You have to go up the trail a little bit further, cut through a stream, and then go down this little deer path. You had to go past a big stump and then go down a little bit further, turn left or right. I can't really remember the entire story, but turn some way. And then the guys were like, yeah, you're going to come across this like stacked set of rocks. And then right beyond those rocks is the cemetery. So they follow these directions and it takes them a good like 45 more minutes from the point where they saw these men. They make it barely. My aunt said that she was just about to turn around to her friend and say like, hey, this is becoming too much of a situation for me. I want to turn around. She said that right as she was about to say that, she saw the stone stack and they were like there, and she was like, okay, well, now that we're here, we're gonna do this. Let's spread your fucking mother's ashes and get out of here. They get there, her friend is spreading the mom's ashes around, and my aunt is just kind of like looking around, taking in the scenery. Like, this is really fucking creepy, actually. She notices that there's like this little tree stand right above the cemetery, just looking down at everything. She was like, yep, spread your mom quickly, we're getting the fuck out of here. They did what they did, and then they got out of there, started hiking the way back that they came. And my aunt thought, okay, like, we didn't really see anybody. I'm gonna let my other dog off of her leash so that she can just kind of like roam around with Charlie. She didn't actually like unclip her from the leash. She just kind of like was letting the leash drag. When all of a sudden they see 2 other men that they didn't see the first time come around the bend again, this way from the opposite direction. And those men stopped and looked at them and they were like, hey, you better like grab your dogs, like get them on a leash or whatever, because we've got like a pack of hounds that are running down this deer right now for us out in the woods. My aunt was like, well, we didn't know it was hunting season. Those 2 guys that we saw earlier had their dogs off the leash, so we thought it was okay. They didn't say anything that it was hunting season. She was like, well, since you're coming from this way, didn't you see those 2 other guys down there with their dog? The owners of that house over there? Like, you must have passed by their house. Their dogs are off the leash too, so why are you coming at us for having our dogs off the leash? Like, you know, getting a little yippy. And the hunter started looking at her like she had 6 heads. And he said, nobody lives there and nobody maintains this place anymore, and they have not for like years. So no, we did not see anybody with a set of dogs besides you, and that's why we're telling you to put your dogs on a leash for your own safety. Now, that freaked my aunt and her friend out a lot. They ended up making it back to their car safely and they got home, obviously. But she just kind of forgot about that story for a while. We were talking together about like what it was like to grow up in Appalachia and like live around that area, and that just so happened to come up about the Bennington Triangle, and it just like kind of rewired her memory. She told me that, and the gasp, I freaking gasped. Dude, I sat her down and I'm like, that is absolutely insane, because have you heard about the ghost dogs of the Bennington Triangle? There have been reporting sightings of ghost dogs for generations. Not to mention, there's time loops that happen when it comes to the Bennington Triangle. Like, that area is just, it almost feels like a miniature Bermuda Triangle. And I don't mean miniature like within size, although it could be a different size. I haven't looked at the geography of that. But whatever, I'm talking about like the experience you experience there, and like the feeling that you have when you're there. It's almost like this energetic feeling because there's portals within. Like, you can slip timelines, you can like the veil is very thin in these places, okay? So we were dwelling on it, and she literally thinks that maybe those guys were like the keepers of that place for a long time, but in the past, and she kind of stepped through a different dimension / like timeline shifting. I don't know. It's kind of unexplainable, but it is actually fucking insane because it goes along with everything that I've learned about the Bennington Triangle and like all of the other
firsthand experiences that I've ever read about. Yeah, I don't know. There's scary things in the woods everywhere, dude.
The scary thing about skinwalkers is that they could be your family, your friends, anyone around you. Now, this is a story I heard from a guy named Jesse. Jesse had just moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and he was pursuing this musical career. He said he got an apartment in downtown, and things were actually going pretty well for him. And he actually got a gig as a guitar player in a pretty large band in the area. So he said, he had just started dating this new girlfriend, and he was enjoying living in the big city when all of a sudden he gets a phone call from his father. Now, his father, he hadn't heard from in like 10 years. He had like went off on a bender, and he had no idea where he went. So it was, kind of weird to hear from his father. His father tells him, I'm going to come to Tennessee and stay with you for a little bit if that's all right. Like, I need to get back on my feet. Is that okay? He was reluctant, but was like, okay, yeah, let's get you better and let's bring you here to Tennessee. So his father comes out and moves in with him. After about a week of living in this apartment, he decides to introduce his girlfriend to his father. The girlfriend, she comes over one night, and when she comes through the front door, she sees his father. Now, he said his father, used to wear all of this Native American jewelry and like a talisman that he believed protected him from anything negative. Well, he said immediately as his girlfriend walked in the door, she got really fidgety and nervous, and she acted like she didn't want to be there or talk to his father. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, she's like, I have to leave, I have to go, and she just walks out the door. So Jesse's kind of like, well, what's going on over there? Like, what's up? And he said, for the next couple weeks, right, she didn't want to come over to the house. She didn't want to see his father. She was acting really strange. So he said, a few more months passed and things were going really good with his father. But then he started noticing that his father would go out late at night. He would be gone for the rest of the night. And in the morning, he would find his father in the living room, completely naked. And he started to suspect that maybe his father was back on something. So, he's stressed out about this, and he's stressed out about his like girlfriend acting strange. And he said, it was just like really, really hard times. Well, he said one night he gets done with a gig and he actually was walking home. Now, at the time, Nashville had a pretty significant snowstorm and there was no one out in the downtown area. And he said he just remembered walking down the streets and it was eerily quiet. There was no one out. And he said that's when he seen in the alleyway next to a restaurant, there was a man standing there. And he said just something seemed off about this person and he felt like something was about to go down. So he started to run. And he said as he took off running, this man started to chase him. And he said all of a sudden, this man went from being a man to some sort of half man, half dog like creature. And he said it was just some ferocious type of creature. And this thing is running after him down the streets of Nashville. And he said he trips in the snow, he falls to the ground, and this thing comes over on top of him and starts smelling him. And he said all of a sudden it turned its head. And he said as he had him, kind of pinned down on the ground, he looked over and he noticed, there was a tattoo on this thing. And it was the exact same tattoo that his dad had on his wrist. And he said this thing just turned and it got up and it took off running down into an alley. And he said at this point, he suspected that whatever this thing was, most likely was his father. And he was now terrified. So he goes back to his apartment. He calls up his girlfriend and he's like, hey, I'm freaking out. Like, this is what just happened with my father. I know you don't believe me, but, something is wrong. His girlfriend comes over and she starts talking to him. And she's like, the reason I've been acting weird is because before you introduced me to your father, I was walking down the street and I seen your father eat a dog. And like I didn't know how to tell you that, and I didn't know like what you would think or if you would believe me. And so like I knew something was off about him. And once he heard this, he was like for certain that like his dad was whatever this creature was. So him and his girlfriend, they locked themselves in the bedroom. And about 1 a.m., he said all of a sudden he hears the front door open of his apartment and he can hear footsteps coming down the hallway. And then bam, 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 he hears this banging sound on the door. And he hears like his father screaming, yelling at him to come out, to get out of the bedroom, get out of the bedroom right now. And he's like, no, I'm not coming out. And he's like, you don't understand. You don't understand. She's a skinwalker. You need to get out of there now. And he said that's when he turned and he looked behind him and he seen his girlfriend was no longer his girlfriend, but the same creature that he had seen on the streets. And so he ran out the door and he said his father did some kind of like ceremony and whatever this was took off out of the apartment and he never seen it again.
I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and I have a lot of scary stories, but one thing still haunts me to this day. So my grandmother had fell and broke her back. She was not doing good. I decided to move in with her and take care of her. She lived in a 2-story house in the woods on top of a mountain. Her bedroom was upstairs, my bedroom was downstairs, but it's not like a typical basement like you're thinking. You enter the 2nd floor on a bridge. So she was bedridden. She could not get up. I had a baby monitor in her room, so if she needed something, she'd holler for a Coke or a corn dog, I could hear her. Well, very often, and I didn't think much about it then, but I do think about it now after seeing stories from other folks online. Sometimes when she would holler, it would not come from that baby monitor. It would come from a room. I have chills thinking about this. It would come from a room where she clearly could not be. It would come from the kitchen. It would come from another room in the basement. I have actual chills right now thinking about this again. There had to be a mimic in my Nana's house. It had to be a mimic. There was no possible way that she could get up and move out of her bed and go and holler for me in these rooms where her voice was coming from. I knew that she couldn't be in there because she was bedridden. Thank God I never actually went to check, because Lord knows what I would have found. I don't think that you can make it out if you go and meet a mimic face to face. Listen, y'all, the stories about the Appalachian Mountains, a lot of them are real. A lot of them are true. If someone has an experience and then thousands of other people have the same experience, it becomes fact more than folklore. And I have a lot of stories about it, but I think about it all the time. Every time I hear something in a room that I'm not in, or something that shouldn't be in a room, I think about that, because she was not up, and what was in that house hollering my name. Appalachian Mountains are a special place.
Spooky story time. A follower named Becca DM'd me her story, and honestly, it is pretty freaky. I had made a comment about this before, about parents for some reason not believing their children. I'm gonna read it to you guys, and she basically just wants to know what you guys think she saw. So she said, "Hey girl, I have been following you for a while, and I've been debating on sending the story into you or not, but I think I'm finally ready to tell it. This takes place when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I also want to start by saying that the house I grew up in was built in 1950s by my Native American ancestors, so I'm not sure if that plays into my experience. I was dead asleep one night when I woke up out of nowhere. It had to have been around 2 to 4 a.m. I shared a room with my brother. Immediately outside of our room was the kitchen, and that is where I saw it. On top of the Lazy Susan on our kitchen table is only what I can describe as the head of a monkey, or what my child brain could make into a monkey. It was smiling at me, mouth closed, grinning from ear to ear. Its eyes were pitch black, no white whatsoever. The closest thing I can compare to is the monkey from Aladdin, but the size of a basketball, and it was literally only its head. What felt like for hours, I was pulling the covers over my head, slowly peeking, and it didn't move once. I remember I wrote on the wall 4 lines in green crayon, and I told myself, if these lines are still here by morning, then I'm not dreaming and everything here is true. Every thought crossed my mind. Maybe my mom was looking for something to wear for work. She placed it down in a weird position. There is no denying what I was looking at. By some miraculous amount of courage, I slowly crept out of my bed and up the ladder on the bunk bed where my brother was fast asleep, never taking my eyes off whatever that was on the table. That is when it blinked at me, the slowest blink ever. That sent the coldest chill up my spine. I rushed up and tried everything to wake my brother up. He was the heaviest sleeper. I shook him, hit him, even tried to bite his ear. He moved around a little bit, but he never woke completely up. I somehow managed to drift off back to sleep, and the next thing I know is my dad is waking us up asking, "Hey, what are you doing sleeping up here?" Without saying anything, I rushed down to my bed, pulled the covers off, and I saw the 4 green lines that I had drawn on the wall the night before. I instantly broke down to my dad. would not go in the kitchen or even look in that direction. Of course, I was met with, "It was just a dream. It's just your imagination." "I know it seemed real, but it wasn't," is what I was told. But I know what I saw. I'm 33 now, and I still remember it perfectly. Fast forward about 20 something years, and I'm about 28 years old. My dad calls me, and I was almost about to head out for the night to have some drinks with my friends. We were talking about my grandfather, who was in the early stages of dementia, and he told my dad to call me. He said, "Oh yeah, your grandpa wanted me to call you earlier because he told me that there was a monkey in his room on top of his dresser smiling at him from ear to ear, telling him to call Becca." My heart literally stopped for a second. I said, "Dad, do you not remember what happened when I was a child?" He said he faintly remembered but didn't put the two and two together. Honestly, he's a skeptic. Something in my gut was telling me not to go out that night, so I didn't. I called off my plans and stayed home. I shortly stopped drinking after that, and I'm coming up on 5 years sober. I have no idea what would have happened if I went out that night, but I knew it, my intuition, that I could have gotten hurt or even worse. I also have no idea what that monkey could even be, or even if the two instances are associated. But it's something that will follow me for the rest of my life. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that this monkey was some sort of protection warning, especially because she saw it when she was so little, hadn't seen it again, was about to go out with her friends, and then somehow this monkey just comes up out of nowhere again? This is very weird. It is very bizarre. And the fact that her grandpa has dementia, how would he even know or put the two and two together to call Becca and make the story up? I am going to tag her in the caption. Please let her know what you guys think, or if any of you guys have ever experienced anything similar to this. But thank you so much to Becca for sending me your spooky story. As always, if you guys have a story that you'd like for me to read, please make sure you send it via DM or email because I'd love to read it. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
This is honestly one of the most visceral descriptions of something paranormal I've received. One of my followers named Bethan from West Yorkshire in the UK sent this story in. And before I get into it, she wanted me to share a bit of context because it matters. In December of 2020, her and her partner moved into a flat that they now call home. Prior to this, they had spent about 2 years street homeless, and then that was followed by about 6 months in temporary housing. So they had been using substances, and they made a vow that when they got the keys to that flat, they were never going to use again. They were going to stop altogether, and they kept that promise. By the way, I am so proud of you. And come this October 2026, it will have been 6 years since they are clean. Now, Bethan says that the reason she wanted to give this context is because when what I am about to tell you happened, they were completely sober. So there's no mistaking the legitimacy of what had occurred. So she says that ever since they moved in, things have just felt off. Nothing dramatic at first, like just catching something out of the corner of their eye. She'd see little shadows running along the bottoms of the walls. And for a while, it was just her who would notice these things because her partner, a lifelong skeptic, he wasn't totally convinced yet. But eventually he did start seeing and hearing things too, and then he started to believe her. So for the first couple of years, they just kind of learned to live with it. Just odd noises and shadow figures lurking at the edges of their vision. But nothing too frightening, nothing they couldn't manage, right? But then one night, everything changed. In the middle of the night, Bethan woke up, staring up at the ceiling. And then she turned her head to the right. And what she saw made her blood run cold. Okay. Hanging in the air, directly above her face, like inches away, she saw 2 beings. She described them as having long and twisted necks, with heads that looked like the biblical demons that you find in old paintings or illustrated Bibles. Their skin was dry and scabby, and the only way she could describe it was like the texture of like when an earthworm is caught out in the sun and dries up. And there were no bodies, no hands, no claws. Just heads attached to long, twisted spinal cords. Oh my goodness, gross. Their eyes were large with black irises surrounded by a little bit of white, and they were looking directly at her, both of them grimacing with sharp, jagged teeth. I would have passed away right then and there. She said it was in a way that was almost like menacing, but also kind of like they were in pain. And she freezes. So as she slowly sits up in disbelief, they recoiled backwards away from her. They pulled back and up towards the ceiling, going in the direction of her bedroom wardrobe, in which they went up and over, and they went behind it and then disappeared. And the whole room was completely silent. There was no sound from them at all. Just this weird, awkward stillness. She was absolutely terrified, as one would be. Okay, so she has CCTV cameras installed in every room, including her bedroom. So obviously the first thing she did was go check her footage to see if anything was captured. And don't you know, the bedroom camera had mysteriously gone offline just before all of this had happened. It was approximately 15 minutes before she had woken up. It was like whatever this thing was intentionally turned it off. She also said that that detail of them possibly sort of turning off the footage before they appeared was more unsettling and terrifying than the creatures themselves. She's still not sure what visited her that night. I mean, it's obviously not the only strange experience that she's experienced in this flat, and I'm sure it's not the last, but it was the most memorable. So she's going to be in the comments. I'm actually going to tag her in this post. She wants to know, what are your thoughts? Like, have you any idea what something like this could be? Have you ever seen anything even remotely close to this? Freaking disgusting, man. So creepy. I have no idea. All right, drop them down there. And if you have a creepy story of your own of any kind, you gotta share it. If you're interested in Creepy Storytime merch, check out the LINK in my bio. And if you're new here, follow for more Creepy Storytime.
I'm gonna ask you to do something for me. Picture a haunted house. You probably don't even need a moment to think about it. You probably already have an image in your head. And I'm willing to bet I can describe that image with relative accuracy. The house is large, old, eccentric. Something about it is viscerally uninviting. Maybe it's dark, austere, isolated, set back from any road, perhaps surrounded by trees or overrun with weeds. Inside, there are too many liminal spaces. There's an attic, a basement, unexpected nooks and crannies, features that don't quite make sense. Corridors are too narrow, stairs creak, doors open and close on their own. Why do we all picture more or less the same house? Or if not quite the same, houses that at the very least conform to such a strikingly similar set of criteria. So there's this article that's been quietly living in my head since I first encountered it in the research phase for my debut novel, Disproving Kilbane. Published in 2020 by the psychologist Frances T. McAndrew, the article is titled The Psychology, Geography, and Architecture of Horror: How Places Creep Us Out. It's open access. I'll link it if anyone wants to check it out, which I highly recommend you do. My book was born out of a lifelong obsession with history, with ghosts and all things creepy. The premise came into sharper focus as I developed a fascination with human psychology in early adulthood. It was only right before I started writing the first draft that I realized there was another element in my psychological historical horror formula that really made me tick. And that element was place, setting, specifically architecture. The older the better. Reading McAndrew's article, that last piece of the puzzle finally clicked into place, and DK was born. In his article, McAndrew applies evolutionary psychology to a question most of us have probably never thought to ask. What specifically about a place activates our sense of dread, and why? McAndrew's central thesis is that our response to creepy places is not random, not cultural, not a matter of taste. It's actually an evolved response. The features that produce dread in us are features that, in our ancestral environment, signaled the presence of predators, the loss of escape routes, or the proximity of death. The horror genre works the way it does, and writers and architects of scare attractions can produce reliable fear in audiences across centuries and cultures because they are activating mechanisms that came pre-installed in the human brain. The genre's most salient tropes are not arbitrary aesthetic conventions. They're a list of evolved vulnerabilities. The most foundational concept in this framework comes from a British geographer named J. Appleton. Writing in 1975, he proposed that there are two qualities of physical space that determine whether humans perceive a location as safe or threatening. He called them prospect and refuge. Prospect is the ability to see, to survey the landscape, to know what's approaching and from where. Refuge is the ability to hide, to be sheltered, to be concealed from whatever might be looking for you. The most psychologically comfortable spaces, according to Appleton, are those that offer both at once. A good place is one where, quote, you can see without being seen and eat without being eaten. That's the entire ancestral logic of human spatial preference compressed into one sentence. We want a view of the field with our backs covered by the safety of a wall. Our human preference for prospect and refuge means that the worst possible space The most psychologically distressing environment that can be constructed is the one that inverts that formula. Low prospect for you, high refuge for whatever threat might be watching you, hunting you. That, in a nutshell, is the haunted house. You can't see what's coming. Whatever is in there with you can hide effectively. The architecture works against you and works for it, whatever it is. Now, overlay a second concept, legibility. Legibility in environmental psychology is the sense that space can be understood and navigated. A legible space is one where you can find your way without getting lost, where the layout makes sense, where you can build a mental map of the building and feel oriented inside of it. The opposite of legibility is what environmental psychologists call mystery. Mystery is the sense that a place contains more than you can immediately see. On its own, mystery is actually attractive to humans. It's why we love wandering through Japanese gardens, old European cities, exploratory hiking trails. The brain enjoys the suggestion that there is more to discover. But when mystery combines with potential danger, when illegibility meets the suggestion that the place might also be unsafe, the result is something quite different. The 2018 study by Gray and colleagues that McAndrew cites is particularly fascinating here. They found that people most easily imagine the spirits of evil people as inhabiting what they call a trapped immortality, confined to specific places. Good spirits in the popular imagination go to expansive, open places, mountaintops, deserts, heaven. Bad ones are stuck. The haunted house, in other words, is not just a creepy building. It's the imagined architecture of a particular kind of afterlife, a place where something malevolent is contained because it has nowhere else to go. The textbook real-world example that McAndrew uses to illustrate the principle is the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. Most of us haunted house enthusiasts know the story. Sarah Winchester, widow of the gun manufacturing magnate, began construction on the house in 1884 and continued it almost without pause for 38 years. The story popularly attached to the house is that she was advised by a medium to keep building continuously to confuse the vengeful spirits of those killed by the Winchester rifles. The house, by the time of her death in 1922, had over 500 rooms, 10,000 windows, multiple staircases leading to walls, doors opening into 20-foot drops, windows looking into other interior rooms, and a layout that no one, including Sarah Winchester herself, appears to have fully understood. It's the architectural embodiment of pure illegibility. And it is, by reputation, one of the most haunted houses in the world. Now, layer in a third element, that of agent detection. This is one of the most interesting concepts in evolutionary psychology, and it does enormous work in explaining how haunted houses operate on us. Agent detection mechanisms are the evolved cognitive processes that cause us to assume agency behind ambiguous stimuli, to assume that the rustle in the bushes is someone or something rather than just the wind. In our ancestral environment, the cost of incorrectly assuming there's a predator behind the rustling sound is low. You flinch, you elevate your heart rate, you waste a few calories maybe. The cost of incorrectly assuming there isn't a predator when there actually is, well, that's how genes get filtered out of gene pools. Over deep evolutionary time, the brains that erred on the side of assuming agency in ambiguous situations simply produced more descendants than the brains that assumed agentless, innocuous wind behind the rustle. In other words, we are the descendants of humanity's most paranoid, which means that any environment that supplies your brain with ambiguous stimuli, creaks, sighs, peripheral movements, cold drafts, half-glimpsed shadows, will activate your agent detection system. Your brain will assume that someone is producing those signals. The agent doesn't have to exist. The mechanism doesn't care. A drafty old house with poor insulation, or settling woodwork, mysterious airflow, unexpected sightlines is, from this point of view, an agent detection mechanism activation device. It will produce the experience of presence whether or not anything is actually present. McAndrew adds another layer that I think is the most analytically interesting one for understanding haunted buildings specifically. He cites Margie Kerr, a sociologist of fear, who observed that places associated with the involuntary confinement of troubled populations, so prisons, orphanages, mental hospitals, are disproportionately likely to be considered haunted. McAndrew extends this. Any institution that once housed a troubled population becomes, in the popular imagination, contaminated by that association. Why does this happen? His argument is that our brains use the history of a place as information. A space that has produced bad outcomes for past visitors is treated by our threat assessment systems as a place that may produce bad outcomes for us. The historical record becomes ambient warning. This is, when you think about it, an extraordinary feature of human cognition. We don't just react to the immediate sensory information available in a space. We react to the story of the space. Knowing that a house was the site of a violent death changes what we perceive when we walk into it, even if the house itself has been entirely renovated and the death occurred centuries ago. The agent detection system runs hotter when the building has a past, which means, and this is McAndrew's final and in some ways most disquieting argument, that haunted houses are, to a significant degree, self-perpetuating. Once a place has been identified as haunted, once the story is established, every subsequent visitor enters the space with their agent detection mechanisms pre-activated. The haunted house produces hauntings because we walk in expecting them, and often expectation is enough. The interpretation isn't usually conscious. It happens at the level of perception itself, in what cognitive psychologists call top-down processing. When I was researching for Disproving Kilbane, this is the part of McAndrew's article that I kept returning to. The fictional house in my novel is, on the architectural level, a deliberate construction of every evolved vulnerability McAndrew describes. It's old, it's large, it's isolated, and I did my very best to make it as illegible as possible, intermingling the different layers of period architecture, confusing the layout, stocking it full of unexpected staircases and hidden spaces and rooms that conceal secrets within the walls. Kilbane House has a history of multiple deaths across multiple historical periods, each one giving the building another layer of associative weight. Most of my characters enter Kilbane with the belief that the haunting can be explained by environmental and psychological factors. What they don't fully account for is something to which McAndrew gestures but doesn't quite name. The architecture and the history of a place don't just trigger our agent detection mechanisms. Over enough centuries, they accumulate something else as well, something that lives in the building rather than in the visitor. Whether that something is real or perceived, supernatural or psychological, intelligent or merely atmospheric, energetic, is precisely the question my novel is asking. Disproving Kilbane is available now. Link in my bio.
Want to hear something scary? I have a ghost story from when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I saw a little girl who used to follow me around places. I don't usually tell scary stories because I don't think a lot of scary things happen in my life. I love the paranormal, but I feel like it doesn't really happen to me a lot, besides when I was younger. I was maybe just more in tune with it, I don't know. I lived in my old house at the time. It was like a nice neighborhood. I don't live in a neighborhood like that anymore, but I used to. The house was small. It had one floor, not including the basement. And I never felt anything creepy in that house. It was just like a normal house. It was like, you know, you go downstairs and you turn off the light and you sprint up the stairs because you're scared a ghost is gonna get you. That sort of thing, but like nothing actually alarming. I'm also doing this in my room with only this light and my TV in the dead of night. So that is great. Anyway, never felt anything too creepy. That was until one night. So I'm going too far. My dad, he wakes up very early, 5 in the morning. He's always been like that, 4, honestly. Extremely early, every single day, by choice. This night, I was sleeping in my room. My room had a bunk bed, but nobody was sleeping on the bottom bunk yet. It was just me on the top bunk, and then there was like an empty bed, because my youngest brother didn't sleep with me yet. So I have my bunk bed. I wake up. It's probably like 5 in the morning or something. I don't know why I woke up that night, but I did. And I was like, I want to get up and I want to go with my dad, because I saw that the kitchen and the living room light was on from under the door. You can see the light seeping in. It was my room and then a hallway and then like the kitchen and living room area, and the light was on in there. And so I get down from my bunk bed and I walk to the door and I open it, and to my surprise, a little girl is standing there. But it wasn't like Samara. It wasn't like she didn't have the hair over her face and a white dress. It's like she wasn't malevolent. It didn't feel that way. She looked like old-timey, maybe 12, 11 years old, and she had braids. It was like, yeah, braids like this. And she just looked very mature. I remember her standing and she was like, she didn't look evil or like anything like that. I think more than anything, I'm getting creeped out now. More than anything, it just, my TV just, okay, I'm sorry. This is gonna freak me out. It wasn't like malevolent. She was just there and I wasn't expecting her to be there, and it startled me. And so I opened the door and I'm 8, 9 years old. I don't scream. I don't call for my dad. I don't run away. I slam the door in her face. Going like this. Probably 6 times. I'm just opening like this, slamming the door on her, because I'm like, this isn't real. I'm not seeing this. There isn't a ghost girl at my door right now. And maybe on the 6th time that I open it, she's gone. There's nothing there anymore. So I sprint out to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, I just saw a ghost. There's a ghost at my door. She was right there. What do I do? And he was like, Kendall, you did not just see a ghost. I was like, yes, I did. She's right there. Obviously, she was gone. She wasn't there anymore. Next morning, I went to tell my mom, or not the next morning, when it was day. I went to tell my mom, and she also didn't believe me. But, you know, I was young, and a few weeks go by, and I kind of forget about it, but I also, like, don't forget about it. I just get distracted, you know? I start to see her again. It's like a 2-week gap where I have not seen her. I start to see her again. I come home from school. I open my bedroom door. She's sitting on the bottom bunk of my bed like this. Just like always, never angry, never sad, just like monotone. And she was sitting there and she would just like dissipate, like disappear. There were other times where I'd be like at school or something and I'd see her. There was one time where I heard her speak, but other than that, it was maybe a few months where I saw her, and then the last time I saw her, I never saw her after that, and it's been maybe 10 years, and I have not seen her. I have other creepy things that have happened in my house, in that old house, things that have happened with her, the stories like when I'm at school and I see her, stuff like that. When I first heard her speak to me, I actually heard her tell me her name, or I think I did. It was a long time ago, but yeah, it was never like malevolent. Like, I don't think she was anything evil. I genuinely think she was just a little girl. Maybe we built our house on land that she used to live on, something like that. She was just there, and maybe she's passed on now. I don't really know what's happened to her, but I hope that she's good and happy. If anybody wants more stories, I would be glad to tell them, because I have told nobody this.
Telekinesis is the ability to move objects with your mind, and according to someone named Anuti, he knows how it works. And he says, while this story isn't necessarily spooky, it still falls into the realm of the unexplained, but he says he's witnessed this twice in his life. He says the first time he witnessed telekinesis was in the 1990s when he was in high school, and up until this point, he was very skeptical of telekinesis and thought it only happened in movies like Carrie or Matilda, only in the magic of Hollywood, you know. But he says it was a typical cold day in New York City, and his family was living in the flat above his cousin's flat, and he decided to go downstairs to hang out with his 2 cousins who were also in high school, and for the story, he calls them Sam and Pran. 2 girls around his age, and he said that he enjoyed their company, but also he wanted to watch something on their massive TV in their living room. And so he walks in, and he sits down on the floor next to Pran, who was eye level with a marble coffee table, and Sam was sitting behind them on the couch doing some homework. As him and Pran are sitting on the floor, he said there was a piece of paper on the coffee table that suddenly did a perfect 360-degree turn on the table in front of them. And he immediately jumped back and he was like, "Did you see that?" Pran looks at him nonchalantly and basically says, "Yeah, that happens all the time." So he looks back at Sam and she's like, "Yeah, I was going to reach for it, but I changed my mind." He says, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, I can do that with my mind." And he's like, "No, you can't do it again." And she declined. And so he tried to duplicate this by blowing on the paper or shove air at it with his hands, but despite what he tried, he could not replicate the movement. He said the corner would either fly up or the paper would fly off the table. It was not behaving in the way that he had just seen it move. And so he's like, "All right, you guys are playing a prank on me." He checks the paper to see if they've got some invisible thread connecting. He checks the windows to see if they're open. He checks the fans. Everything's off. He cannot find a reasonable explanation. He said he left the apartment in absolute awe, and before he left, he finally said, "Can you guys just tell me how you did that? Like, please, like, I want to know how to do this trick." And Sam tells him reluctantly that her mom knows that she has this ability, but told her to keep it a secret. He said she was a rather serious person, but told him that things like this happened all the time around the apartment and that they just did their best not to acknowledge it. Fast forward to 2015, okay? So he's at his other cousin's apartment. He goes over there every weekend. This other cousin is named Kev, and he's the brother of Sam and Pran. He's staying the night over there. Before Kev goes to bed, he's like, "I'm going to go do my bathroom routine." And every night, apparently, he follows the same routine. Before he brushes his teeth, he reaches over to the shower to turn it on, and then he goes back to the faucet to brush his teeth. And he repeats this night after night. On this particular night, Anuti is using the computer. Kev's like, "I'm going to go get ready for bed, do my usual nighttime routine." And he's like, "Cool." He's on the computer when he hears Kev scream, "It happened again." And he walks over to the bathroom. He's like, "What happened?" Kev said, "Somehow I am turning on the faucets with my mind." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, I just think about turning on the faucet and then it turns on." And this is like the 3rd night in a row that it happened. And Anuti said immediately he was brought back to that day that he was in the apartment with Pran and Sam, and he was like, "You're their brother, like this makes sense." And he said he immediately believed him. He says that both of his cousins treat this ability like it's a curse rather than a gift, and he's jealous of it. But he says that he thinks that the way that it works is in both instances, both people claim to have been thinking about the action that they were going to take when it happened. He says he believes it comes more from routine than it does from willing something to happen, because your subconscious is so used to you doing something that it takes the next step for you. He said his cousins don't like to talk about it, they don't like to do it, but it makes him wonder who else in his family has these abilities and are unwilling to talk about it too. What do you think? Elaborate prank spanning decades and multiple people, or is there something that our minds are capable of that we just don't acknowledge? Let me know your thoughts.
For 3 months straight, every second Monday at exactly 2 a.m., something visits me, and 2 days later, someone dies. Scary story time. I'm sharing this because I've never been able to explain what happened, and I'm curious if anyone has experienced anything similar. It all started on August 9th, 2009, the second Sunday of the month. I had gone to bed like normal when I suddenly woke up to something screaming my name. I looked at the clock and it was exactly 2 a.m. on Monday morning. As I looked towards my bedroom door, I noticed something blocking the light coming from the basement nightlight. It wasn't an ordinary shadow. It was darker than darkness itself. Slowly, it moved into my room and began taking the shape of a person. The temperature instantly dropped. It stopped at the foot of my bed and just stood there. As I stared at it, I felt overwhelming emotions pour into me: dread, sadness, anger, and a feeling I can only describe as death itself. It wasn't like normal emotions. It felt almost electrical, as though they were being forced into my body. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. 2 days later, my grandmother passed away. For the rest of that month, I constantly heard growls, footsteps, and felt something lurking in the basement. On September 13th, 2009, the second Sunday of the next month, it happened again. I woke up to loud screaming. I tried to keep my eyes shut because I knew what I was about to see. But the presence felt stronger, almost angry that I wasn't looking. Eventually, I opened my eyes, and it was 2 a.m. The figure was standing at the foot of my bed, staring directly at me. This time, the emotion it forced on me were even stronger than before. 2 days later, a coworker died. Again, the strange activity continued throughout the month. I heard footsteps, growls, and what sounded like a small child's voice coming from the basement. When I tried to tell my parents, they admitted they also had been hearing strange noises downstairs. Then came October 11, 2009. I woke to someone whispering my name directly into my ear. Once again, it was exactly 2 a.m. The shadow stood silently at the foot of my bed, watching me. This time, it didn't force over those overwhelming emotions into me. It simply stared. 2 days later, my grandmother's sister passed away. After that, my mom placed a cross in my room. From then on, I would sometimes hear whatever it was pacing back and forth outside my bedroom door at night. It almost felt angry, as if it couldn't enter my room anymore. Eventually, everything went quiet. Months later, I remember telling my girlfriend that I had thought it had finally gone. The moment I said that, we both heard a little girl's voice quietly say, "He's still here." At that exact moment, my PS4 shifted on its own, and 3 claw marks suddenly appeared on it. This is only the short version. A lot more happened after that. Eventually, I moved into my girlfriend's house, and whatever this was seemed to follow me. According to everyone in the house, it began terrorizing the children there as well. Thankfully, I haven't seen or felt its presence in over 10 years. And that's the end of the story. So have you ever experienced something that's been able to predict death, or have you been able to predict death? A while ago, I told a story very similar to this one, but instead of an entity coming to this person's room and like inflicting the premonition of death, they would have dreams instead of someone close to them that would eventually pass away. I know that there are people that are born with kind of like a sixth sense and are very sensitive to these types of things. So let me know, are you one of these people that can kind of like have a premonition of what's to come in the future, or that something might happen? Let me know. I would love to know. Also, if you have a story that you'd like to share with me, you can send me your experiences to my email in my bio. I'd love to read it. And also, if you would be okay with me sharing it here, that would be really fun. But other than that, if you have any experiences or know of anyone that has experienced something like this, maybe a family member that has been known to have, spidey senses and, would like to share something, you can leave it down in the comments. I'd love to read it. But yeah, let me know.
A series of spooky stories, except for it's aliens and UFOs. Story time starts with these two on their property. Mind you, they are in BFE. There are no lights, no people, no nothing. They have a lot of property. They live in a really wooded area. They have a pond on their property. And something to note, she says in the very beginning, I keep my lights on all throughout my house at all times. She also says, you know, it's a bad habit. And I'm like, you know what, girl, it's your electricity bill, whatever. Set the scene. They're on their property. It is almost 10 o'clock at night. They're watching the news and they see something about UFOs. They say, you know what, I want to go outside and see if maybe I can see some UFOs. They walk out and lo and behold, they see something. They say they see two bright, like, illuminating balls in the sky. Stay tuned for the video. The way that she describes it, it sounds like they're kind of like dancing around each other and they're moving very quickly. One goes one way and then goes around and then shoots off. They grab their dog and they walk down their driveway to a dirt road. They notice that their pond, that usually has like a lot of frogs, is silent. So they know, you know, it's super weird because they're loud all the time. Ribbit, ribbit, loud as fuck. Nothing. They walk down the driveway to the dirt road with their dog, and as they hit the dirt road, they hear a humming, like a weird frequency type situation. Now, the way that they describe this frequency music, as they keep calling it, is someone taking a bunch of glass cups with different amounts of water in them and then going around it. You know what I'm saying? Like Miss Congeniality. You get it. Whenever they hear the humming, the dog jolts off into the woods. So at that point, they start freaking out. She said at the beginning, they felt really calm. They weren't super scared. But then she feels really weird all of a sudden. They call the dog back and they start walking back. She's like, hey, can I tell you something that's kind of like freaking me out? And she's like, no. Valid response, because please don't. I'm already about to have a heart attack. She's visibly shaken, tears in her eyes as she's talking, and she really starts to tear up whenever she says, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I said, we are not alone. I know that we're not alone. While they're walking back up to their house, they hear a humming from one side of the property, go quiet on this side, and go right to the other side. They hightail it back up to their house. They go in. She locks the front door, goes to lock the back door, and she says as soon as she flips off the light switch, the whole place goes dark, as if the power goes out. However, there are two lights that they have like near their computer or something like that. There are two Pokemon lights. And then she said something about maybe her stove light being on as well. So they still had power, but all the other lights went off. I know what you're thinking. Maybe a breaker blew. No, hear me out. They go to their room, they lock themselves in their room, and then she calls her sister. She says, you need to come get me right the fuck now, quick, fast, and in a hurry. The sister hangs up the phone and texts them and says, I don't know what's going on, but I don't hear anything but humming on your side of the phone. Now, if that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies, I don't know what will. And like as they're in their room, they hear a really eerie knock. Still freaking out. I mean, I would have been with Jesus at this point. As they're in the room, they're trying to calm down, positive affirmations, and they say, whatever this is that is with us does not have any power over us. So finally they open the door and they flip on a light switch and the light comes on. After the second time flipping the light switch on, she notices that this is even more creepy. That's telling us that the power didn't go out. Somehow all of these light switches were flipped off whenever she turned that light off. If you blow a breaker or your power goes out, the light switches don't move. So none of those explanations would make any sense for this. Now remember, I said in the very beginning, she mentions that she leaves her house lights on at all times, every single one of them, from one side to the other. I'm gonna go ahead and play the video that they got of those little orbs.
Hi. Come on. I got it real close. Just tell them to go outside and look at the sky. They're going to see the same sky we're seeing.
Now, I want to hear y'all's opinions in the comments because there were several differing opinions in their comment section. Some people were saying that what we're hearing were frogs. Now, I have grew up around frogs. I live in BFE. So that's literally, I could walk outside and find one right now. That is not what frogs sound like. So I don't know what the fuck that was, but that was indeed not a frog, in my opinion. Some of the theories on what those orb things were, I believe it was called a plasmoid or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's big balls of plasma and they can like hold themselves together and they move, whatever. But in my opinion, with the humming and all of the things that happened, I just don't see that being a giant ball of plasma. That's just me. Now, I will say there wasn't anybody that I saw like discrediting her because she was visibly upset in the video. And they were like, well, listen,
we believe you. This is definitely one of those situations we could tell that you're really scared. So whatever happened, it happened. This is her handle. I will tag her in the caption. I want to know what your thoughts are. Drop an alien emoji in the comment section.
What if your creepy local legend turned out to actually be true? That's what happened to the residents of Staten Island back in the 70s and 80s. Children during this time grew up hearing stories about Cropsey, a creepy man who kidnapped kids that stayed out too late. As the story goes, Cropsey lived in the woods after escaping from a nearby mental asylum and began hunting children at night. When he stumbled upon one wandering alone in the dark, he would drag them to the tunnel system beneath the abandoned Seaview Hospital. At the time, it was just a spooky campfire story, something that parents would tell their kids to make sure they made it home before dark. But then, several children in the area started to disappear. During searches for the missing children, a makeshift campsite was found in the forest surrounding the Willowbrook State School, where a man named Andre Rand worked as a janitor and lived in the woods. Near the campsite, in a shallow grave, was the body of 12-year-old Jennifer Schweiger. Jennifer was a student at the Willowbrook State School, but the children at the school were not there to learn. They were victims of horrific abuse and were often left in unsanitary conditions. They were even experimented on, and many of them did not survive. A 1972 TV show exposed everything that was happening inside of Willowbrook, but it took them 10 years to have it shut down. The school's janitor, Andre Rand, had first been arrested in 1969 after trying to kidnap a 9-year-old girl. Police believe that 15 months later, after he was released from prison, he went on a murder spree until he was finally arrested. He's currently still in prison for the murder of Jennifer Schweiger, but it's believed that he's responsible for at least 4 other children's disappearances. But unfortunately, none of their bodies have ever been found.
A series of spooky stories, women's intuition. When I was in college at the start of the spring semester, people kept asking me how I thought the semester was going to go, and I said, I don't know, but I strongly feel like it's going to be different. They asked me, what do I mean by that? And I said, I don't know, I just feel like it's going to be different. It was when COVID hit, and all classes went virtual. One day downtown Austin, Texas, I was with a friend. The vibes were immaculate. We were on 6th Street, and all of a sudden, I hit a wall. Like, I was so tired. It was only like 12:30, and this girl next to me said, I am so tired. It came out of nowhere. I said, yeah, me too. We were too tired to power through. It just got worse. I turned to my friend and said, it's time to dip. I'm so tired I can't anymore. At 1:30, there was a shooting. We didn't even leave the street until 1 a.m. I mentioned people offhanded in conversation, mostly people I haven't seen in years, only to find out that they passed away the next day. This has happened probably half a dozen times. I try not to mention people from my past now. Before my granddad died, I had a dream that he fell off a wharf and drowned. He was in a wheelchair because he was an amputee. I tried so hard to save him, but I couldn't. A few weeks later, my granddad passed away due to health issues. I feel like the dream was telling me that I couldn't save him. Then, at his funeral, me and my stepmom were sitting next to his open grave, talking, and this huge yellow and black dragonfly hovered above his grave/coffin, just staring at me. Dragonflies are his favorite insect. I had a therapy session on a Friday. I was telling her I felt so off, like something was wrong, but I had no idea what it was. Sunday morning, I woke up and was so drained and sick feeling. I slept all the way into the afternoon. All day, I had an uneasy feeling, and I couldn't figure out why. We had a family dinner that night, and my husband left early to get his motorcycle back before it got dark. On his way back, he crashed and was gone before he hit the ground. That is so sad. In 2022, I had a strong feeling that someone was going to die. I told my old college roommate, and she told me not to say that. I had a feeling that it was going to be my mom, and a couple months later, she passed away. Trigger warning for self-harm. In January of 2013, my cousin Patrick passed away from his own hand. It was a huge hit to my family, especially my sister Carly. A few weeks later, after he passed, I had a dream that it was probably 2004, and my cousins, all 13 of us, were at my grandparents' house, just like we were almost every summer. I walked out of the front door to see a bunch of them playing and having fun in the front yard. Out of nowhere, the whole dream just stops. Everyone disappears except for my cousin Patrick. He turns and looks straight into my eyes and says, please tell everyone I'm sorry. Please tell Carly I'm so very sorry and I love her. I promised him I will. He smiles his crooked smile and I wake up. I cry for a bit and then I call Carly and tell her about my dream. The cries and tells me that she really needed to hear that. I will always hold on to that dream. Every time there's been a death in our family, I've had 3 knocks on my door for a few nights or weeks before it happens. It became a pattern that I began to notice from childhood. My most recent one was February 2023. I woke up to 3 knocks at my bedroom door. 17th of April, my brother had a heart attack and died. I now believe it's the angel of death letting me know that he's coming. Can you imagine hearing 3 knocks on your door, just knowing that that's going to happen? Just not knowing who. Jesus. I put my daughter to bed when she was around 4 months old. I came downstairs to make fajitas, put the baby monitor on, and continued cooking. A few minutes in, and very loud sizzling from the food, so I couldn't hear anything. I had the urge to run to her. She had swallowed the cord of her baby bumper around her cot and was laying on her back with the cord still halfway down her neck and covered in her own vomit. She was too young to turn over or pull the cord herself. I pulled the cord out, made sure she was breathing, handed her to her dad, and then had a meltdown. If I hadn't have ran, she would have choked on the cord/vomit, and I have no idea why I ran, but I think everything every day that I listened to my inner voice and did. Also, don't put baby bumpers in cots. 100% they are a suffocation hazard. Come back for another part.
A few of my friends and I went to go explore an abandoned building. We were fooling around and took a few photos of each other just for the fun of it. When I looked back at one of the photos the next day, my heart dropped. I'm not somebody who usually believes in ghosts, but I really don't know what this is. This is a picture that I took from my trip to El Salvador. It was my first time going to the mountains in my home country, so I took a bunch of photos. I wanted to capture one of the little houses that were there, and I ended up capturing this. This is a photo that I took of my cousin while she was trick-or-treating. She wanted a picture in front of this particular house. She was completely alone in the picture, but after we looked back at it, we could clearly see something standing behind her. I was recently at my friend's house, and while having some alone time by a window, I noticed a strange figure by the neighbor's garden. After taking a closer look, I realized this wasn't a strange illusion or anything, but rather an actual figure. I took a photo and ran as fast as I could to my friends, and I showed them. As I did, my friends started walking to the window and saw that the figure had completely disappeared.
What if the scariest ghost story isn't one from a movie, but one that actually happened to someone? A shadow that shouldn't have been there. Footsteps in an empty house. A voice when no one else was around. Those stories have been shared for generations, and now I want to hear yours. Welcome to my Ghost Story series, where I'll be sharing real experiences submitted by viewers, along with the history and legends behind some of the world's most haunted places. If you have a ghost story you'd like me to share, go to the link in my bio and fill out the form under Ghost Story Submissions. And if there's a haunted place you'd like me to research, leave it in the comments. Because sometimes the best stories are the ones we can't explain. Stay on the path, and may the forest watch over you.
Might have known the story of real life boogeyman.
It's so hot in this office. I have no air conditioning. I'm sweaty, but we're going to talk about this scary video real quick because I want to know what's going on. It's been all over my FYP. There's two girls in this video. They are like hanging out at home. They're recording, being silly, trying to get up on a top bunk of a bunk bed. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but you're about to see it in just a second. But I want to talk about it first because I didn't even catch it in the beginning. It's very subtle, but down on the bottom, the little girl that's like trying to push the other girl up, when she says help, a hand comes up out of nowhere and like pushes on her shoulder. Now she swears, I will put her in the captions, she swears that there was no one else in the room, that they were just recording being silly, and that this actually happened. You watch it, you tell me what you think. So the video goes on for a little bit before this, but I just got to the main part, and yes, I put a sticker over her because I don't feel comfortable showing that, but yeah, there's that hand. Do you see it? Let's zoom in on it. There's the hand again. Yikes. That looks like an actual human hand to me. Yeah, I know. But she says no one was there. I believe her. Why wouldn't I? I mean, could she be lying to me? Yeah. Do I think she is? No. Because why would she post this so many years later? Apparently this was like way back in the day. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments.